Hi, I'm Ali Words, and this is Last Unrifled Yaw. Last Unrifled Yaw is a podcast where we have conversations about video art, experimental music, avant-garde literature, performance art, and the occult. If you or someone you know would like to be on Last Unrifled Yaw, please get in touch. Eanna Mac Cana is a filmmaker exploring archival footage through documentary and experimental shorts. Hey everyone, I'm Ali Words, and this is Eanna Mac Cana. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, Eanna?
Hello, I'm a filmmaker from Belfast, which is in Ireland. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, maybe you could describe one of your films.
Okay, cool. Well, have you seen any of them?
Yeah, I've seen a number of them.
Okay. Um, if maybe which one would you like me to talk about?
I don't have the names on me right now, but I was noticing that a lot of them they seem to tie together in terms of being about you personally, but then also your parents that are also artists.
Oh, yeah. That's correct. Yeah, no, my parents are a massive part of why I got into being creative. They're both artists themselves. Um, although my father, he paints and my mother draws, but I work with moving image primarily. Um, yeah.
What drew you to filmmaking as opposed to some other art form?
Um, well, there is that sort of fundamental source of my parents and growing up within that sort of environment. But I think in terms of what got me into filmmaking, I think it was probably YouTube, watching YouTube as a teenager, and most likely video games as well. Um, and there are films that I have been influenced by, and I was blown away by as a teenager and as a kid, but it was never so much traditional cinema that got me into filmmaking. I think it was stuff I would see on the internet that got me into the kind of filmmaking that I'm interested in, which is short experimental films that I would primarily upload to my own YouTube. And um, I love YouTube as a platform and as a place for expression. So yeah.
Yeah, so I got the list of videos back up in front of me now. Um, so the first one I watched today, and I went through and I watched a bunch of the shorter ones today, was Cluster.
Mm, yeah.
Would you like to talk about that one?
Sure. Yeah, that was a tough one. that was
Yeah, it seems.
that was a really tough one. Yeah, where do I begin with that? That one, I think I'm still kind of recovering from that one.
We can talk about a different one if you
No,
want.
no, no. I'm happy to talk about it. It is the most recent one. It did take a lot out of me, that film, and at the time I was making it, my personal life was a bit, yeah, it was really a mess. And I was in a bad way when I was making it, which was only a few months ago. But that one, I'm delving into some traumas, as a teenager, and then recent stuff. Yeah, it's a real hodgepodge, and I think really what it's about is me trying to make sense and trying to move forward from some personal problems that have been sustained, whether they're my own making or whether they're purely circumstance. Yeah, a lot of things are. I suppose I should give context to my practice. When in 5 years ago now, I was diagnosed with a form of cancer when I was 19, and I was interested in film before, but when I was diagnosed and in the months after, I began to look and articulate myself differently. In film, it was, things became a bit more serious and whatnot, and I was, I was approaching being creative in a different way, and it was a real outlet for me. Um,
So
yeah.
for people that haven't seen it, what is the like elevator pitch for what Cluster is?
Oh, it's just as I said. It's about dealing with a lot of personal problems. It's you know, cancer creates new traumas, treatment and recovery. It strips away a future from you in a sense, but also I find that it also reveals some things that you haven't quite dealt with, and it can reveal traumas from before. And cancer, it felt like a reset for me, but then I started at times to tumble down, you know, a similar path to problems I had before, and that was difficult to deal with in the aftermath of such a massive reset. So I think Cluster's about that. It's about relapsing into some problems and trying to move forward. And yeah, I think Cluster's really about relationships and um, people who have hurt me, and people I've hurt, and there's a lot of different ideas going on
Hmm.
within.
I noticed that there were a lot of photos of, I think, someone's vocal cords or some part of their throat.
Yeah, that was archival imagery, but that was, I suppose, that was in reference to me. It was also in reference to the etiology of disease, because I had done quite a bit of research into why my type, where my cancer came from with glandular fever, which is then linked to the type of cancer I had, which is called Burkitt's lymphoma, or non-Hodgkin's Burkitt lymphoma is the type I had. And yeah, I've been researching massively into this because I'm actually making a documentary on the man who Burkitt's lymphoma is named after, who was called Dennis Burkitt, and he is in fact from Ireland. Um, so it's been it's been a crazy year as well, because I've been getting to know his family. He's passed away now, but I've gotten to know his family, and I'm making a really interesting film on him and uncovering all these things. But I suppose I'm kind of getting away from the point here.
No, no, no. That's all good. You can go in whatever direction you feel like. So when you're making, I guess let's talk about Cluster just a little bit longer. So you said you used archival footage in it.
Mm-hmm.
What's your process like for actually planning, or maybe you don't plan? What is it like to make a film like Cluster?
I think a lot of it starts in sound. I would go out and about and record different sounds or hear different things. Cluster was made in collaboration with my friend Will, also known as Moonpaw Print, who's a music producer. So he dealt with a lot of the sound stuff on that, but I also was helping out in that department. But a lot of it starts in sound, and I'd write down kind of like lyrics almost, one-liners, and start to link them together. Yeah, and images. I have a massive store of archival images that I've collected from throughout the years and working on different projects. And I've always kind of highlighted bits and bobs that I thought that could be interesting, and how does that relate to me? Is it the sort of feeling from the image, or is it an explicit reference to some sort of something within the body which affected me? Because again, I should have mentioned this earlier. With my disease, it was a lump in my throat is where the tumor was, so you could actually see it, and then it erupted, and it hemorrhaged, and I had to get surgery and then treatment after that.
Hmm.
But so that's the reference to the image you're on about.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
But yeah, and What else was I going to say? No, yeah. Anything else? It's a tough film that I'm a bit of a mess talking about it. It's a really tough film for me to articulate. I think it really is best that people
Okay.
watch it and experiencing it for themselves. You know, it's part of an overarching story. I think Cluster. I don't think I'll be making really any more. I'm moving away from short films now, and I think Cluster is a good note to end on. Especially some of the final lines within Cluster. I can't remember exactly what I said. I'll try and bring them up here, but um, I felt it was the right note to end on for me personally. In a sort of overarching arc of films. Oh yes, I said I've got my words up here. I said he feared everything going wrong and everything that was right around you, within. You're not what's broken. The heart, it's the heart. Then cluster the soul. When I'm scared to open my mouth, opposite the pulpit, I'll settle my tongue and open your door. It's also that is inspired by my friend who's been going through um, a similar thing to me, and I think it's me talking to him. So
Hmm. So what's made you want to move back towards longer? Are you mainly moving towards like longer documentary pieces, or?
yeah, it's just the projects, and I think it's just the natural way of things. This project I'm working on, it's very strange experience because it feels like a full circle. I was diagnosed with this thing called Burkitt's lymphoma, and then it was only last year that I looked into Burkitt's lymphoma for the first time. I never looked up any information when I was in hospital about my illness, and I was just scared. I was scared to like read anything about the sort of outlook and um, what the future is like with the disease. But I actually I wish I did, because it's very positive, especially treatment of Burkitt's lymphoma within the West is 90% curable. But yeah, so it was only last year that I started to look into Burkitt's lymphoma, and then I knew I did hear that Dennis Burkitt, the man that Burkitt's lymphoma is named after, I did hear that he was from Ireland. But then I looked a wee bit further into him. I was over in London and I went to a medical library called the Wellcome Collection, and I started to pull out all these rare materials on him, and I was looking at all these amazing images and documents, and it was incredible. And then I got in touch with his family, and and then I've been over to England various times throughout this year, and I've been interviewing them. And speaking to other connected people, biologists, and all these amazing medical people, and um, it's been a really strange experience. The film's still not made, but it is nearly there, and it feels like a real special film. So it's been quite an experience, but yeah, no, things are moving towards longer projects. Um, I think it's just been a natural thing. It's what I've always wanted to make longer films. I think that was always the kind of end goal. Although I had my interest in YouTube and shorter pieces, I always wanted to make a longer works. Originally, I wanted to do like a longer drama, but at the moment, it's just documentaries that I'm really interested in.
I see. How does this current one you're making compare to? I forget the title, but there was a documentary you did that opened up with. Um, it was like thermal imagery of I think your father painting.
Yeah, yeah. How does it connect to that film in particular?
Uh,
This one's also shot in black and white. Um, Although there's no thermal imaging involved in this one on Dennis Burkett, there will be thermal imaging involved in another documentary I'm making actually at the moment, which will be a longer piece as well. Um, uh, I'm not sure. I mean, there's similarities aesthetically between this and that film you referenced there, which is called The Fuse. Um, but There'll be two different things thematically.
Yeah, I meant more in terms of what it's. I guess it's pretty different in terms of what it's like to make them because of the content. But
Hmm.
so when you were making the fuse, how did you approach making it?
Um, well, that was made during lockdown, and I had 2020. I was things have been in a bad. I was in a bad way in 2020 as well at the start of the year. So then I went out to the countryside where my dad's studio is, and I stayed there for a number of months. And I basically I was alone for a little bit, and then he came down, and we had talked about making this film, and yeah, we just started. I started recording his practice. He was working away, and it was kind of fly on the wall sort of stuff. And then a lot of it, if I'm trying to remember correctly, a lot of it was articulating and trying to bring in a lot of the energy that I felt within the area, because within that area of South Armagh, which is where the studio is based, there's a lot of history to do with the Troubles, which I'm not sure if you're aware of.
Not
Um,
really, no. I
but
think there was like a little blurb about it in the description, but I didn't dig
Yeah,
into that.
the Troubles is basically a long-standing conflict, or there's long-standing conflict within Northern Ireland politically and religious. So it's a real mess. But a lot of it was bringing in that energy and bringing in, my own sort of personal energy and putting it onto a film, and how those two overlapped, and it was just a feeling at the time. Yeah, and describing, my father's practice and how he articulates, his own experience and growing up in a very sort of testing time, and just kind of referencing the patterns of problems and things like that. I am terrible at talking about my own work, but
It's all right.
um,
Um,
it's always best you just watch it.
for sure, yeah.
I'm not a very good speaker at all, which is kind of ironic because I'm narrating this documentary on Dennis Burkett, but I can take my time with that.
It's all good. So, what are some other documentarians that you draw inspiration from?
Ooh, I do like Adam Curtis.
Yeah,
If you,
his stuff is cool.
I like his selection of archival imagery, and I like his use of text. Um, but I like Bill Morrison. He's also another archival fella. I like. Honestly, I don't watch too many documentary filmmakers. But Bill Morrison made a film called Dawson City: Frozen Time, which is incredible. It's about old film being dug up in the Yukon region of, I think it's in Canada or Alaska, and it's this incredible film told over time, and it's about memory, and it's just an incredible film. Maybe him, but honestly, I'm more probably inspired by music, um, and yeah,
In what
different.
way does music inspire you?
Ooh, um, It depends. I mean, artists like a big inspiration this year has been Black Country New Road, who are an English band, I think, and the way they structure their songs and um, the way the singer approaches the mic and the contrasts between the songs. I think contrast and structure, um, being creatively played with. Um, yeah, things like that I'm drawn to, and music is so well, it's cathartic for everybody, but you know, um, yeah, I find it deeply cathartic, more cathartic than probably any other form of art, in terms of experiencing it. I'm also massively influenced by Interpol, especially the lead singer Paul Banks. I think he's a fantastic lyricist, but beyond sort of creative influence, I think just from what I've seen of him in interviews, and he seems like a really nice guy, and so a bit of a role model for me personally. So.
So, how do you think about structure and contrast when you're putting together a film?
Um, I'm not sure. Sometimes it's almost like the what you see on the timeline of your edit. You'll see different waveforms, and um, in terms of the size of like a what do you call it, like the volume on the edit on Final Cut is what I use. Um, I'm not sure. A lot of it, I zone out when I edit. I sort of go to a different. It's a bit. It'll sound a bit ridiculous, but it feels like I'm painting when I edit because it's such a fluid process. Um, I feel like I tap into something a little bit deeper, and it can just feel so effortless for me. And I've got it set up real nice. I'm not waiting on something to buffer. I'm not waiting on something. I can just get into it, and I can edit for ages and sort of just zone out, and it feels very, very fluid. Um, but I'm not sure. I think it's just that would be a hard thing for me to define um, in words. I think again.
It's all good. Yeah, a lot of the people on the show have talked about um, working subconsciously or various kinds of like automatic writing, drawing, improvisation, where they're
Mm,
not consciously
yeah,
doing things.
yeah. I'm trying not to use it as a cop out, but yeah. I think one thing that's important within my practice is that I don't discriminate in terms of how an image looks or how something sounds. I'll even use that in a creative way if the resolution of something isn't very good, or the sound of it isn't up to standard, isn't up to whatever standard the industry suggests it should be. I think that is such a mistake that filmmakers can make in terms of what they've recorded. Um, I think you shouldn't be too picky about the technical quality of a recording if it fits in emotionally. Um, if it adds to the sort of texture of a piece, then I think it can play a part, and I think that's something I'm really proud of, is that I'm attracted to all kinds of different material, visually and sonically. Um, yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense. It also makes sense for someone who works a lot with archival footage.
yeah. It comes from that as well. It's something I remember Adam Curtis talked about. Was just he's drawn to it. There's a special something about an image he's drawn to, and that's why it's used. Um, it just adds to the mood for him, and I guess it's the same for me.
So, how do you go about finding archival footage?
Oh, I don't know if I should. give
Oh
you
well, if you don't want to, don't give away any like secret spots or anything. But like, what's the mindset like for? But let's say that you found a ton of archival footage that fits your current project, right?
yeah,
How do
yeah.
you sift through it? How do you
Oh,
decide what's used where? I've thought about that before. Like,
yeah.
there's just so much stuff. How do you
Um,
even approach that?
oh God. Well, I made a previous documentary where I had to. It was archival based, and it was about the hospital which I was treated for my illness in. And at the time I was making it, I was freaking out because it was during COVID, and I couldn't gain access to any institutions where they actually had, you know, videos or photographs physically that I could scan or get developed. So I had to turn to the internet, and after some thorough research, I found some stuff on the Internet Archive. But I don't know if I'm all for people finding stuff. But I don't know if people if I want to give away my well of archival images that I found on the Internet Archive. But it's on the Internet Archive. They have some great stuff on there. But in terms of going through the videos, you just got to watch them. And watch them again because I selected loads of videos when I was making that film, but I had to rewatch all the stuff that I had downloaded for this new film. And when you're at different stages of your life or you're working on a different project, the what you're going to be attracted to changes. So and just refreshing and taking breaks from watching stuff as well is important. Go make a cup of coffee or go for a walk or something and like freshen up before you can, because things become stale when you're watching them for hours and hours. But yeah, um,
For sure, yeah. I've only used archival footage a couple times, um,
mm,
and it was stuff from either the Internet Archive or like
mm,
really old movies that are public domain.
yeah,
And it makes sense that you would have to just like download a bunch of stuff and then make a second cut to decide what's best for whatever you're doing.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
how long do you think you spend going through archival footage for each like minute of usable material you get?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, God, I'm not sure how much exactly, but it's months. I mean, I've been working on this one on Dennis Burke since about late last year, and it's been changing shape and changing form. And then luckily for me, Dennis Burkett was a fantastic photographer and documented his whole life through film. And I'm going through hundreds, if not thousands, of photos and old films that were recorded and interviews. So for this project, there's been a lot of sitting and watching, a lot of thinking, a lot of reading, because for me to speak on anything to do with cancer, I feel like I have to research and educate myself on in terms of how does cancer work. And it's quite it through that it triggers some things for me, but it's also it's a kind of a revelation in terms of the simplicity of cancer. And it's almost a relief as well, learning about the treatment of it. And people shouldn't view cancer as this horrible thing that's done in the water. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, it almost sounds like a meditative process once you've gotten the footage.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I agree.
Do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
Um, I did have one earlier. I was because I remember you sent through the thing. No, I can't think of any. How are you?
That's good.
I,
Yeah, I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm okay. it's weird. I've been interviewing people this year, and it kind of dawned on me that I've been hitting people with all these hard questions this year, like all this philosophical. Can I swear? Can I cuss? Is
Yeah,
that
you can cuss. It's fine.
I've been I've been hitting people with all this shit this year, like interviews and catching people off guard, and I was like, oh fuck, I'm in for some karma here. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to be have a taste of my own medicine.
That's interesting. Now I have to interview you about interviewing.
It's an interesting topic. How do you find interviewing?
I really enjoy it.
Mm,
At least within the context of finding people making unusual art
mm,
and just asking them to explain how they do it and why they do it, how it
yeah,
affects them.
yeah, it is really interesting. It's interesting how I think it's I'm not feeling maybe the interview as much here because we're just talking to each other. I'm not seeing an image of you, but when I record people with the camera, I'm talking to them before the interview, and then as soon as I hit record, it's like they've changed. They're a different person. Suddenly they're all tense, and it's hard to get an answer out of them. It's strange how the camera affects things, and the flow of interviews, and how it can it's amazing how many questions can open up through just talking, and also how questions can kind of lead you to a dead end in a way, which is probably what we're suffering from here today. But oh, I'm only joking.
No, this isn't a dead end. It's kind of diverging from what you would expect from an interview, which I love and is experimental in a way that's perfectly fitting for Last Unrifled Yaw.
Yeah, yeah. I listened to a couple of your interviews. Who was it? Derek Hunter. Enjoyed
Mm-hmm.
his. Enjoyed his. Yeah. No, I think you're top. You're top notch.
Thank you. Now, I have to wonder about the psychological effects of interviewing someone while filming them.
Mm.
Um, I'm not saying to film someone without their consent, but I wonder what it's like if the camera isn't visible. Like you tell them they're on camera and like they're consenting to it. There's no like unethical business, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not like a camera pointed at them. It's concealed in some way. Do you think that might have an impact?
If they're unaware of it.
No, they're aware that they're on camera and that they're being interviewed, but
Oh,
they don't actually see the camera. Like you tell them.
yeah, yeah. I feel like that might impact them more in a sense. You know, if the camera's present, then they know it's in the room. But I feel like it might add a wee bit more curiosity and what's the word? There might be a bit more wondering what's going on if the camera wasn't present, but they've been told they're being recorded. It might be a bit more sinister.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what you do to make people feel more at ease in front of a camera.
It just depends. Sometimes it just depends on the day, and how they're feeling. Interviews are. It's like a person's being turned into fucking concrete, but we change from day to day. I'm a different person I was a couple hours ago. It's. I think they're really interesting in terms of how they capture people and what people filter out and are open to talking about, and you know people I think do tend to be a bit more standoffish, or I find myself yeah, it's strange how it affects behavior. It's a really it is an interesting actual subject. It would be interesting to research into it.
Yeah. I will say one thing I've noticed with this show in particular is that some people are much more word people.
Yeah.
And especially since this is like an audio only interview,
Hmm.
um, especially like comparing writers to musicians.
Hmm.
Writers, like remember the Derek Hunter podcast?
Hmm.
With a lot of writers, you can just like ask them a question and they will just go for like 10 minutes. And I love it. There's nothing wrong with that. But because they're so word oriented, um, they can just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. If it's about the things that they write about because they've already written so much about it. But if you get
Yeah.
someone who's like a musician or someone who approaches their material in terms of more of like the emotional content of it as opposed to anything rational,
Yeah.
they often find themselves not able to fully explain in words what it is that they're doing and why they're doing it. And there's nothing wrong with that either. It's
Yeah.
just the nature of it. I don't remember where I read this, but in a book somewhere, I read that writing about music is like dancing about architecture.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. No, I think you're right. Um, I think you need to be careful. People who have um, who have a handsome tongue are alluring, and they can come across um, more clever than they are. I have some friends who are great speakers, but people are intelligent in different ways. As I've kind of said, um, to get me out of my stupid answers in this interview, but we articulate ourselves in different way, and we can be smart in different way. I think it's easy to say someone's really smart if they're a great talker, um, but sometimes it's just about appreciating people are can articulate themselves in different way. Um,
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the reason why people get into some of the less word oriented or less rational forms of creative expression. And
mm,
some of your films definitely are structured like that, even though yours do have a literally poetic quality to some of them. Like they actually have like lines that look like they'd be from poetry that pop up. I guess that's
yeah,
maybe a little bit of the Adam Curtis influence. Maybe I'm
yeah,
detecting.
yeah. Lines will pop up. Words will things that people have said to me and that I've been inspired by, or songs, and things will kind of just pop up in my head, and I'll note it down on my phone, and I wonder where that comes from, and where within that comes from, and how it can be used creatively if it can be attached to anything.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. You're not really using them as rational linguistic expression. You're
yeah.
recontextualizing these words and things people have said
Mm,
within an audio visual emotional context to communicate on an emotional level, just like music tends to do.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And you can have very nuanced emotional communication.
Mm,
A lot of the best classical music, um, that's maybe classical specifically is the wrong word. I'm having Chopin in mind, so that's more like, I guess, late romantic or something.
mm,
But they can have like very detailed, nuanced emotions and developments and communications without um, relying on words.
yeah. 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 I agree. Um,
And there's also the idea of like pauses between people talking. You kind of need rests in music. And that's something I notice a lot in the way people edit YouTube videos or some documentaries, not all of them, where it seems like anytime they stopped to breathe, they just cut out the silence and it's like jittery almost. You
You
know what I
need
mean?
sound. You need sound. Yeah, it's again, it's that idea of contrast I'm attracted to. You need space in between things. Not everything needs to be congested, and as you say there in YouTube videos, and probably what you get more on. I'm not on TikTok, but if TikTok is just, I imagine, filled every second is filled with something. So being attracted to space is something I'm interested in. The negative space, and little spaces in between are really important.
So
What do
here's an interesting anecdote. You're right about TikTok most of the time, and
you?
it tries to force you to experience things in that frenetic way that you're describing without any rest.
Okay.
But on my TikTok account, what I've done is I don't like TikTok really. I just have it because there were people talking about some stuff I did and I wanted to make sure that they could find what I was doing. But for my actual feed, anytime I see something that looks like a normal TikTok thing, like if there's a person talking, I immediately scroll. And I'm convinced that TikTok uses the front-facing camera to watch your eyes for both pupil dilation and where you're looking. But if you scroll, the second you see a human, especially if they're talking,
Mm-hmm.
your feed, at least for the first 100 or so images in a given day, maybe I'm on TikTok once a week, you'll get stuff that doesn't have people, and they'll try to throw in like a standard popular TikTok every once in a while to like reel you back in to that
Yeah.
scattered monkey brain. But if you look at the tab liminal spaces,
Yeah.
you'll get just like cool ambient music, like chill, that, and then like scenes of like maybe an empty swimming pool with like slightly off-green lighting, and it'll
Yeah.
just like float there. And there are like whole tags associated with like weird core, dream core, liminal spaces, just capturing space inside of TikTok instead of
That's interesting.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the medium could be used like that, and there are people trying, but the
Mm.
TikTok algorithm specifically doesn't want people to do that.
Is TikTok all vertical video?
Um, like 99% of it. My videos aren't vertical, so you have to like turn your phone sideways. But yeah,
That's
and
cool.
you do vertical video.
Yeah, I was just I'm really interested in vertical video. I think it's a really cool sort of canvas to work on.
What do you like about vertical video?
It changes how you approach it. The typical thing is 16:9, and just when it's flipped on its head, cluster was done in vertical video, for example, and those archival clips used in it. I had to zoom in on certain parts of the archival clip to use it in a vertical video format. And but I think it's really interesting just in terms of how you approach it, and it can be kind of exciting to just creatively approach a different sort of size of canvas, and um, I'm just kind of interested in keeping things exciting. I suppose that's why I'm interested in it.
Yeah. I don't
And
know. I feel like vertical video a lot of the time makes you feel like you're closer to
yeah,
whatever it is.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I
yeah.
hate this thing within filmmaking of like, everything must be shown within like a cinema. I'm not for that at all. I completely reject that notion. I've seen films on, like, do you remember like an iPod Classic or like an iPod?
Yeah, I had an iPod Nano, I think, that I would watch movies on sometimes.
Like I've watched films on those, and you know, of course you see things differently within a cinematic. Like within a cinema, you're going to see things, and I love going to the cinema and watching. But I hate this kind of like sort of fuck you attitude to experiencing things on a device, because you could be watching that on a bus, and something outside the bus, you know complements what's going on within the film. For example, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it's just something I'm interested in. I think that's probably why I'm interested in vertical video, because I don't hate these new things. I think it's always good to be creatively open to new shit that's coming down the line.
For sure. Now, I have to ask, theoretically, how would you design a genre of film or documentary or whatever specifically to be watched, like on a bus or while walking on a sidewalk, sitting on a bench in a park? Like,
Well,
how do you make
that's a good.
film that complements these non-standard locations?
Yeah, I think that's one for the video installation artists out there. Um,
Hmm. What do you mean by that?
well, and if I've done a couple video installation like exhibitions and stuff, within like a gallery space, and you gotta, when you show up with your work or whatever the situation is, you gotta rethink how you're going to show it. When you're installing, things change, and you gotta change with it, and be aware of the space and use it in the correct way, and challenge it. In terms of on a bus, I mean, there are screens on buses, aren't there? Like on the backs of seats and things like that. I'm pretty sure you could do it in that way.
Hmm.
Sidewalks, I mean, we do have them already on advertising boards. You know,
Yeah, it'd be
yeah,
nice if they weren't advertising, but yeah,
yeah, that's true. Or you get it when you're walking down the street and there's a screen pointing at you on the shop front, you know.
for
Or
sure.
and we get it walking down the street. People will be watching videos on their phone. I feel like it's kind of already there in a sense.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting. Thinking about it as installation art.
Mm,
And now I'm just wondering how that relates to like augmented reality, which has not really been utilized very much yet. But in a sense, augmented reality is like installation art that goes with you.
mm, yeah.
So I guess at that point, we're moving beyond like the vertical screen to like the spherical screen.
Okay.
I guess that's sort of what VR is like, having a spherical screen around you.
Yeah.
I'm kind of just spitballing here. You don't have to
No, no.
jump
I've
off of that.
I've only experienced VR once. I really enjoyed it actually. Um, yeah.
What do you think about the idea of VR documentary?
I'm all for it. You know. Um, yeah. I think that's my next project.
Yeah.
um, no, yeah. It's just as I say. You know. All these new technologies can be used in a positive way. It's easy to look at something new and be fearful of it. And I've talked to some friends about like, yeah, all the VR, you know, intruding the home and is it stepping over the line? You know, having to have a headset on you or something like that, or the metaverse. I don't know too much about these areas, but it is daunting. But there'll always be in terms of being creative, there'll always be something to take away from it. Sometimes using the form of something's enough. You know, if you're doing something in vertical video, it's a sign of the times. You know, it's if you shoot in video, it's you're using the form itself as a statement as well. I'm a big fan of. So
Hmm. I see. Have you ever seen those there are videos on YouTube that are like 360 where like you hold your phone in front of you and you can like physically turn around. It's almost like a little window into another world.
um, I haven't experienced it, but I'm aware of it.
Okay.
Have you?
Yeah, a few times. Like I think the first time I encountered it was a Bjork music video. I don't remember which one.
Okay. What
But
kind of music are you interested in?
oh, I like anything that's formally experimental. Uh,
Oh,
I'm less interested in a specific genre than I
yeah,
am someone playing around with whatever genre they're using.
yeah.
But yeah, I was just imagining like just going off of archival footage, you could make like a collage of kind of like archival footage GIFs. They don't have to be repeating, but they could, and then build almost like a virtual architecture in 3 dimensions out
Mm,
of all this archival footage that you would see, you know, juxtaposed next to each other. You move your phone around and you see different parts, and you couldn't see the whole thing at once. You'd kind of
mm,
have to explore it. So it'd be like a found footage film that you explore spatially as opposed to temporally.
mm, mm. That would be interesting, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know what concepts that'd actually be useful for, but it would look cool.
Definitely. Oh, you were talking about what sort of influenced me. I remember when I was a teenager, I would have watched like Machinima, like not the YouTube channel, like the using video games, um, and then turning it into using a video game world, but not using it as a video game, using it for whatever you want to make out of it. I like that kind of idea.
Yeah, that is interesting. There was I don't know, I never really watched much of those, but there one that used like Halo or something.
Red versus Blue.
Yeah.
I love that show. I love that show. The first two seasons of that were great. That's a nostalgia trip. That show.
Gotcha. It's
Yeah,
cool.
they were great. Oh, Rooster, yeah. Um,
All right. Do you have any other questions you'd like to ask?
I'm trying to think. I had a great question lined up. I can't think of it. um, no, are you working on anything at the moment then, or?
Yeah, I don't really talk about current projects,
Hmm?
but um, I will talk about. I talked about this last episode, um, and the hard part is done. It's basically just a lot of the computer rendering things.
Yeah.
Like my computer is doing something right now. Um, my computer is normally going at least 18 hours a day rendering something when I'm doing video work
Okay.
because
Wow.
um, but what it is, the core concept is that a lot of my videos involve dance, like buto, and I'll
Hmm.
wear like a red skin tight suit,
Hmm.
and I might point like a green light at myself so that I have different colors, and I'll like dance around against an entirely black background, and then I'll layer video textures onto the different parts of the lighting, like the highs and lows and the mids.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
But what I did for this video is I took stills of one of those recordings and I put it into an AI that generated a bunch of photos that looked like that still, but had me in like slightly different poses.
Okay.
And then I stacked them all together like the keyframes of an animation. And then I have another software going that's doing all the in betweens between those. So you get this smooth morphing of me in a bunch of different positions.
Nice.
And then I'm going to treat those as the dancers that are being arranged.
Really cool. Sounds like the start of Mulholland Drive.
What do you mean by that?
There's a little sequence at the start of Mulholland Drive where there's these people dancing.
Oh, yeah, I vaguely recall that. It's been forever since I've seen Mulholland Drive.
It's a great film. Um, what was I going to say? Why don't you talk about present projects just out of interest?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. The first is that I find that if I talk about something that I'm currently working on,
Yeah.
um, I I kind of lose some of my momentum. I feel like I'm cashing out the the conditioned behaviors that I've developed within myself for the
Mm.
project for social cred. I get like I enjoy talking about my work, so I don't let myself. I let it build up, and part of
Yeah.
that is because each of my pieces generally is a ritual that I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
and the work that's left over is just the results of that ritual. But
Mm.
while I'm making it, I am still in a long term ritualistic process.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah,
Um,
but
sometimes,
yeah, go ahead.
sometimes, yeah, no, sometimes it's good to, I understand the fear about, talking about something that you're at a certain point, and sometimes it's good getting it out there and yeah, just letting it out into the world, and then coming back and looking at it in a different way and seeing what people ask about it or say about it, and yeah, but no, I understand what you're saying completely.
Yeah, it depends because
Mm.
what I try to do is each piece has like a specific state of consciousness that
Mm.
induces its creation. Sort of like you were talking about slipping into a flow state
Mm.
when you're editing. I
Mm-hmm.
try to build up a different kind of flow state using
Mm-hmm.
different symbols and techniques. Um,
Mm.
so I don't really like to jinx it until it's
Yeah, yeah.
done. I've
Are you
done that before. I've been like halfway through something and I talk to someone because they would legitimately like it and they might even have interesting commentary on it. But
right?
then I don't get that same feeling that's leading to the creation of the piece as it is.
Yeah, yeah. Are you superstitious?
I am a practicing occultist. I
No.
don't view it as superstition.
Okay.
I frame magic as consciousness altering performance art.
Okay.
And then I like doing that because it leaves out any discussion as to whether or not altering your consciousness induces changes external to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it makes clear that there is an activity people call magic, and whether or not you believe it can have effects external to you, you can still perform these rituals and things do happen. um I don't know, I don't need to go on too much of a tangent about that. Are you superstitious?
I'm Irish, so yeah. No, I struggled with it before, or not struggled. That's how you perceive it. I try not to be, but it's difficult.
Why is that, if you're comfortable talking about it?
Sure. When I probably felt it most acutely when I got out of hospital. I would see a bird and have a freak out and think it's a sign that cancer's growing again or something like that, for example. It's just, for me,
Mm.
I started seeing patterns and they were negatively affecting me. And I just tried to sort of cleanse myself of that. But some things, they appear and it's hard to shake the notion of something else. It's really difficult.
For sure.
Yeah, I struggle with that a lot, actually. But I try
that
not to.
that's a pretty normal experience for people that start. Often any sort of emotionally intense event can push people towards that, especially unpleasant ones.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
um, and I think the thing that helps me the most with that is remaining in a sort of philosophical agnosticism. So, like, I might see something that appears to be meaningful, right?
Mm,
Like birds, they're a classic in terms of
mm,
like being omens, right?
mm,
There must be some sort of deep hominid interpretation of flying things as being meaningful, things in the sky.
that's interesting.
But you don't have to. The part where people go off the deep end, some of the time, there are lots of ways people can drive themselves mad, is when you remain 100% convinced that this thing you saw means this exact one thing. So, like, maybe you saw this bird, and maybe it did something in your subconscious mind, and it has some sort of important meaning. Like, it
Mm,
is hitting something in your subconscious mind, in your psyche, trying to tell you something. But on a rational level, avoid ever being 100% certain that it actually means that something bad is going to happen, something good is going to happen. You,
mm,
and maybe allow yourself conditionally to experiment with believing, okay, maybe this bird is a harbinger of my fear of something bad happening, right? The emotional reaction you're having to it, rather than it being whatever the thing is. And then if you believe that your own emotions and actions can influence your life, then allowing that fear to consume you could
mm,
cause bad things to happen. So what that would mean is that when you see the bird, um, I recognize that you have this fear and banish it, like you did.
mm. Yeah, yeah, I really dig that. Yeah.
Or you could even use it as sometimes you're not consciously aware that you're afraid, but then you see this bird and you realize, oh, I actually am afraid. It can let your subconscious mind communicate to you, but that doesn't mean you should let your subconscious mind control you.
Mm.
All right. Well, it's been good. Do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Um, I guess I've mentioned the documentary I'm working on.
Does it have a title yet?
Um, I think it's just going to be called Burkett, named after Dennis Burkett. I did think of something last night to do with birds, but I thought, let's just try and keep it simple. So it'll probably be called Burkett, because it's not just about him; it's about his father, who actually was an ornithologist, funny enough,
Hmm.
and it's about his wife, Olive. So yeah, that's the one, I suppose. If people are interested, that's the one to watch in the future. It'll be out next year, I'd say.
Cool. All right. It was great having you on.
Yeah, thanks very much for inviting me on. It's been a blast.